Welcome to the Intuitive Therapist Podcast with Janis R. Cohen, therapist, clairvoyant, empath, and medium. Listen in as she takes a no-nonsense deep dive into real human struggles and how to resolve them. Janis will share channeled information from her spirit guide team, as well as the angels and archangels, to help you master your emotional, physical, financial, and spiritual destiny. And now, Janis R. Cohen.
Hey y'all, this is Janis Cohen, the Intuitive Therapist, here on the Intuitive Therapist Podcast. So today we're tackling a challenge that many people have: the need to fix other people. Why do we do it? What's the cost to ourselves? And most importantly, what should we focus on instead? So today we uncover the psychological reasons behind this pattern. We explore 3 powerful questions to ask yourself, and you learn 3 strategies to help end the need to fix other people. Now, I have a question for you. So, have you ever felt the urge to rescue somebody? Maybe you think if they would just listen to me, their life would be so much better. It might feel noble, compassionate, even selfless. But what's really going on? Why don't people do what we tell them to do? And why do we feel so compelled to fix the broken wings of others? Well, in my 32 years of being a clinician and my own struggles years ago with the need to help save and fix others, I realized that there are several issues that existed within me that were fueling my need to help save and fix other people. And I've seen these patterns exist in others, so I want to share them with you. The first is unresolved personal wounds. When we see somebody struggling, it can remind us of a part of ourselves that we haven't fully completed and healed. Y'all know what I say about that word healed, but I will use it in this context because most people understand that word. So helping them feels like we're indirectly helping ourselves, but we really aren't helping anybody because we can't control what someone else chooses to do. And if we aren't growing ourselves and dealing with our own issues, we're going to seek that validation and value by trying to help somebody else. And that never works. Now, the second part of this struggle involves the illusion of control. And fixing others, oddly enough, it gives us a sense of control in this unpredictable world. It's a way of avoiding our own uncertainties by focusing on somebody else's life. Does that make sense? And for those of you out there who are fixers, likely this will land with you. Now, the third is that we are seeking validation and worth. And many of us, we tie our value and worth to how much we can do for others. So being a fixer reinforces a sense of importance or purpose, but it can also become a trap that drains us, right? How many times has somebody come to you in pain, really struggling, and they dump it all over you, and then they ask for advice? And you take time to listen, and then you advise them, only for them to turn around and do nothing. I found myself so many times in the past hitting that wall, and I would get so frustrated, right? And it's terribly frustrating because you feel exploited and you feel suckered. It's like, well, shit, you just called me up and you dumped all this stuff out, and it sounded like you wanted help, and I gave it to you because you called me because you must have thought I must have had something good to say, and you just didn't do anything. And what we realize over and over again is that when we try to fix people and they're not ready to help themselves, we're going to hit this bind again. Somebody calls, somebody needs me, they dump all over me, I offer my help, they do nothing. So you've got to be able to learn how to recognize when somebody's actually ready to receive your feedback and guidance, or whether or not they're actually just venting or trying to align and connect with you in pain, right? So this is where learning to have better boundaries with others comes into play, as well as understanding who you're dealing with and being fully aware of your desire to feel a greater sense of self-importance. Now, remember, everyone that comes into your life is your teacher and a mirror for you. So if you are feeling compelled to fix others, know that what you're really searching for is for you to feel validated, important, and significant. And I'm going to add that you would actually like your problem solved because you feel overwhelmed and burdened. Now, unfortunately, nobody can help you feel those things other than you. You got to decide at any time, you can do this, how important you feel to you, how significant you are through the quality of the relationship you have with yourself. Okay? Now, today's episode is all about taking a look at the root cause of the savior complex. And I think we touched on 3 very key points. And that means looking at yourself. So the more you do that, the quicker you can resolve the misdirected behaviors that you have. And there are 3 powerful questions. I love questions. You all know me. Love questions. So I have 3 powerful ones for you because I want to encourage you to look at yourself. If you identify as a savior, and if you're conscious enough to say, oh my God, that's what I do, please listen. There's no criticism or judgment. I've been there, done that. Oh, most of my life I did that, right? So here are some questions I want you to consider. You can always pause this recording, write the question down in your journal, questions, and take time to answer them. So first question is, what am I avoiding in my own life by focusing on their life? So this question forces you to confront any fears or challenges that you're sidestepping. I remember when I was in this place in my life, I wasn't aware at all that I was doing this, but I look back and I realized that I was simply trying to find myself. And once I did, the need to fix others vanished into thin air. Once I was able to feel self-reliant, that I could solve my own challenges, that I could do things that allowed me to feel powerful, right? I didn't need to keep looking outside of myself to fix other people. Now, here's the second question. Am I truly helping or am I trying to control the outcome? Now, genuine support empowers others to grow on their own. Control, on the other hand, limits them. So the need to control others, it's really your ego's way of feeling significant, and it never lasts. It's really empty. So we're constantly looking for that dopamine hit of, "Oh, I helped somebody. I'm amazing. I'm important." Because there's always, we aren't connected to it's one of those things where you think about somebody's always doing something incorrectly, right? And so it's easy to see when we're on the outside looking in, it's easy to see how people are screwing up, isn't it? And where they could course correct. But it's very hard to do that in our own lives unless we develop and cultivate the ability to go within and become the observer and to actually have our eyes open to see, what we could do differently. So we're not connected to other people's stuff, so we can see it with greater objectivity. But anytime we feel triggered, and this is what I want you to hear, anytime we feel triggered to influence somebody else in any way, know that it's likely that your life, perhaps, maybe even in the same area, isn't all tidied up. And you might want to look at that. Maybe it's in another area. So, you feel compelled to have somebody clean up their house when your house is a mess, right? Now, the third question is, what would happen if you actually focused your energy on yourself and decided, you know what? I'm going to just do me. I'm not going to try to save anybody else. I'm just going to do me. Imagine redirecting that same effort and the good intention towards your goals, your dreams, and your own personal growth. Imagine what you could achieve. So I want you to look at, when I ask you this question, what would happen if I focused this energy on myself? What fears does that bring up in you? What does that feel like in your belly? Do you even know yourself well enough to know what to focus on in the first place? Who would you be if you just focused on cleaning up your side of the street and kept your nose out of other people's business? Who would you be? In your mind, who do you believe you'd be? And then on the flip side of that, who would you be if all you did was just focused on yourself? You certainly wouldn't be a bad person, right? So, what would happen? What would happen if you just focused on yourself? And I can tell you this, if you decide to do that, you're giving yourself the gift of cleaning up your life. And ultimately, which is where we're all headed, ultimately, you'll begin to feel more whole. Now, so we understand, I've talked about the why. We've talked about 3 questions that will kind of prompt you to really look within. I want to focus on some strategies here to help you move forward. And so here are 3 ways to get back to self and to stop focusing on others. This first one is a tough one for a lot of people. Set emotional boundaries. Now, you got to be clear about where your responsibility ends and theirs begins. And for those of us that are active saviors, and for those of us that are recovering saviors, this is a really tough one because our intentions are good and we want people to be happier. But what other people do with their lives is not our responsibility. And so it can be tough if you don't really know who you are. And I always reference that. You got to take a good look at your life and see where you could have either avoided challenges or where you could do things differently in the future to get a different outcome. And this is connected to the setting emotional boundaries because you can't set emotional boundaries until you learn the lessons you need to learn. You won't stop fixing other people until you have fixed you. Boundaries aren't walls. This is the thing. They're guidelines for healthy relationships. And the more self-respect you have, the more solid boundaries you have, the healthier all of your relationships will be. The second is practicing self-reflection. I'll always talk about looking within. That's the only way to grow, right? So spend time journaling. And for those of you who have an aversion to journaling, you're like, oh, I don't write full sentences. I may bullet point, or I don't like to write things down. I want you to look at that resistance. That's resistance. It's not because you don't like it, and it's just not something you do. There's a choice. There's a reason why you choose not to do it, because it actually will take time. You'll actually have to sit with yourself. You'll actually have to do some work that really might bring up shit that you don't want to deal with. So when you have the courage to journal, maybe even meditate and uncover what's driving your need to fix, that's huge progress. So you might look at what wounds or insecurities need your attention. For me back then, I didn't have a great deal of self-esteem, and I didn't know who I truly was. And it wasn't until I dove deep into my own personal development that I realized how I was driven and motivated to seek approval, significance, and value outside of me rather than cultivate it from within. And I used to refer to myself as a late bloomer. But as I've evolved and the more connected I am with spirit and the more I channel, the more I realize that no, there's really no such thing as a late bloomer. You bloom at the right time. Always, 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 always. Now, self-reflection, it's a very powerful vehicle for growth, and it costs nothing to take time out and connect with yourself. See, my cat just affirmed that. But if you don't, it may cost you everything. Now, the third strategy is to shift to empowerment, not rescue. So instead of solving somebody else's problems, ask how you can support them in finding their own solutions. This is huge, huge, huge shift. You want to be really helpful? Shut your mouth and ask them a question so that they can find their own answers, right? Simple question like, well, what do you think would work best for you? It shifts the dynamic. Now, it's a powerful and transformative question to ask people, but most people, their automatic default answer is, I don't know. Now, your job after that is just going to be to learn to sit with the I don't know that they give. And don't say anything. Just sit. Hold space. Give their I don't know some room to breathe like a fine wine that's poured in a decanter. Silence allows people to continue their thinking process out loud, right? And from that place, you might hear them say something like, well, I guess I could do X or Y or Z. And then a great follow-up question from you to them could be, oh, well, God, what would that look like? Or what are some other options that you could consider? What else might come up? So here's the bottom line. Fixing others isn't your job. And my cat agrees. It's theirs. Your job is to focus on your growth, your purpose, and your happiness, your sense of freedom. And when you stop trying to fix everybody else, you free yourself to live fully. And you stop hinging your sense of self on being needed by others who actually need to solve their own problems. So this week, I want you to pay attention to any moments where you feel the urge to fix somebody. That doesn't mean be helpful, but to fix them. And I want you to pause and reflect on the questions that I talked about today and try one or maybe all of these strategies. So if this episode resonated with you, please share it. We all know fixers. We all know people who really look to gain their sense of self from helping others and saving others. And the more people we can help to get to stop that and come to self and reflect in and grow, the better the world gets, right? So share it with somebody you know. And please don't forget to follow, subscribe to the Intuitive Therapist podcast for more really powerful podcast episodes like this. So until next time, I wish you a blessed day, a wonderful week, and as always, live intuitively.
Thanks for listening to The Intuitive Therapist. If you like what you heard, the best compliment you can give us is to share this podcast with a friend. And be sure to give us some stars and a favorable review at Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen in.